Today we're reviewing the latest release from Found North, the Hell Diver. How is it? Stay tuned to find out. Welcome back to the Bourbon Retriever. Today is a special day because I get to try Found North's latest release, Hell Diver. I first want to give a thank you to Found North for sending the sample and also disclose to you guys out there that this was a free sample. I'm a relatively small channel, 1,000 subscribers, so the fact that Found North would send this to me to let me try, I am just completely honored. But the fact that they sent me the bottle is not going to impact my review. I'm going to give you guys my honest opinion on this bottle. So the general specs on it, it is Canadian whiskey. It's a blend of actually corn and rye whiskey though, with varying years. This is coming in at 15 years old, but it has blends up to 23 years old. I want to say it's a 15-year corn, 22 corn, and 23 corn, and then the ryes are 18 and 19 years or so. But given that 15 years is the youngest age in the blend, that's the age limit they have to put on it. So in the press release that Found North sent me, they described the process they went through for this blend, and I thought it was actually pretty cool the level of detail they were giving. So for the first step in the process, they took all the different barrels here from the different ages they have, blended them together to make one blend. That's their baseline blend. The ended up mash bill for that blend was, I wanted to say 85% corn, 14% rye, and 1% malted barley. They then took that blend and then finished it in 3 separate barrels for about 6 months. They did a cognac barrel, a sherry barrel, and a New American oak barrel. Now after those had been aged for 6 months, they then took them and reblended them together to make the final blend. In the notes, they talk about how they didn't just take all the barrels and put them in together. They balanced it out to match the profile they wanted. So I'm not traditionally the biggest fan of Canadian whiskey, especially light whiskey. To me, a lot of times it can be just super high proof. You don't really know what the mash bill is. Canadian rye can mean all kinds of different mash bills. And to me, a lot of times the Canadian whiskey is just very one-noted. It's just a really nice, light, sweet whiskey. Canadian whiskey also just doesn't have the best reputation. Most people will know the most recognizable brand is Crown Royal. There is a cult following around Crown Royal, but I would say in probably the bourbon enthusiast community, it's not the most sought after bottles. However, Found North has been doing a fantastic job with their bottles. I was able to try a couple of their bottles at the Jack Rose event last year. They had a couple of different batches, including, I want to say a 20-year, started with a P, I'm blanking on the name now, but I loved it because it had more oak than what I normally get from Canadian whiskey. The last couple of specs in this bottle before we jump into it, the MSRP is about $160, and they only produced about 2,000 bottles, so it may be something that is allocated in your market or it can be a little harder to find. For instance, I know here in Maryland, one store pre-sold their whole allotment before it came in. A lot of stores are getting only 2-3 bottles. I heard one store maybe got a case, but it is very limited across Maryland. But with that, let's go ahead and jump in. All right, cheers. On the nose, the sherry and cognac are coming across the most prominent notes. Of those, I'd probably say the sherry is the most pronounced, with the cognac being a little more in the background, but those are the two biggest notes you're getting. Yeah, the oak is not really coming too much on this, which is expected. It's only, 6 months in that oak barrel. You guys can probably notice by looking at the sample here, I put a little bit of a dent into it. Since it was finished whiskey, I wanted to give it some air before I did a review. So I first got it, I opened it, I cracked it, gave it my first impressions, and then here about roughly a week to a week and a half later, I'm going to do the review of it and see if it's changed at all. And the first thing I can tell you is the aroma is pronounced. When I first poured this, it was very muted, light, which is what I've come to expect from finished whiskeys. When you first crack them open, it is probably the most muted that finishing note is going to have, and it's only going to get more intense as it opens up. All right, on the palate. All right, my first impression on this is balanced. I mentioned there was no oak on the aroma, but on the palate it is there, and I'm sensing it. But it is balanced out with the sherry notes. A lot of times with me with finished whiskey, a lot of times you use finished whiskey to cover probably whiskey that's not that great, so you overpower the finish, and all you're really getting is whatever the finishing product is, whether that be sherry, cognac, etc. But in this one, the oak balances very well with that sherry. I would say the prominent note is still the sherry. The front end, I get a little bit of that oak, kind of the darker notes, and then it transitions into the sherry finish. The cognac is probably there a little bit. I'm not getting too much of it, but the sherry is the most prominent note to me. It's tasting almost like a powdered cherry, and then let it soak a little bit of its own juices for a little bit, and then eat that, and that's almost exactly what I'm getting. And then one interesting note that I'm getting that I didn't get the first time, but I'm getting now is a cinnamon note on the back end where the spice is kicking out a little bit. I'm getting almost like a cinnamony, peppery feel in my mouth. And I'm a little surprised that I'm getting that cinnamon from this combination of barrels. And then now that I'm smelling it again, I'm also getting that cinnamon on the aroma. I don't know if you guys have gotten this, but it's happened to me plenty of times where after I'll smell it, I'll drink it, and I'll smell it again. And then what I'm smelling is either different or I'm getting additional notes after I drink it. I think there are some science behind it. I watched a video once where someone kind of talked through it. I'm not going to pretend like I know it. I just know from my personal experience that I will often smell different notes after drinking it. Yeah, I'm really digging that finish. It's a nice evolution, right? At the beginning, you get that little bit of oak, turns into that really nice cherry, some other sugar I was talking about, and the back end you get that cinnamon, nice lingering finish. This is at 119 proof. It's a little hot, but not too hot. I think that nice sweet zone is 107. Anything under 120 is still a great proof. Yeah, overall, I think this is a great product that Found North has put out. Might even be the best Found North product that I've had. I am really enjoying this. Hey, before I get into my final review of the Found North Helldiver, if you're enjoying this content, please consider subscribing to my Patreon channel. This is a fast-growing channel, but there are many costs that go with growing your channel. Paying for StreamYard, getting a website open, launching merchandise, and it's just a bunch of upfront costs. So any support you can give me through Patreon is super helpful and help me to grow this channel. Now for the final review, it is $160. That is a lot of money. However, if you look at the age, it's a little more comparable there. It's a 15-year age product with a lot of older blends in it. So $160 for that age statement is kind of on par, even though it is a little bit of a Canadian whiskey instead of the bourbon. And overall, this is probably the best Canadian whiskey that I've had, which to me is a little surprising because I'm traditionally not a big finish fan, but I think finishing, when done well, can work, especially for Canadian whiskeys who can be missing, lacks of depth in their profile. And when you add these finishing products, it can make it a much more well-rounded drink. But you have to know what you're doing, and Found North seems to hit the nail on the head with this bottle. Now, would I recommend you to go out there and run and hunt it down? I don't know if there's a secondary on this for yet. I haven't seen one pop up yet. But if you're a bourbon drinker, I would recommend you to see if you can get one of your friends, sample from them, or go to a bar and get a bar pour. Canadian whiskey is very different than bourbon. You're not going to get the traditional caramel, vanilla, oak notes that you would get from a bourbon. It's much more on the lighter, sweeter side. So if you're someone who hasn't had Canadian whiskey, I'm hesitant to tell you to run out and buy it because it's $160. But if you're someone who enjoys Canadian whiskey, this is definitely a bottle you should go out and hunt and try and grab, because I think this is an absolutely phenomenal version of what Canadian whiskey can be. The last thing I'll say is, if you don't enjoy finishing products, you won't like this. It's gonna have those finishing notes. Like if you've had several sherry products and you just don't like the sherry, you're not gonna like this because there's sherry in it. You have to understand that when you listen to these reviews and hear people talk about them. If you find out you don't like a certain category, even if someone says it's the best thing in the world, you probably shouldn't go get it because you should trust your own personal preferences. But if you're someone who enjoys finishing products, I think this is one that's really done well and can show you what a finishing process can be. Especially coming from someone like me, I traditionally don't like finished products. And to me, this is what a good finished product can be. So that's my review of Found North's Helldiver. If you're enjoying this content, before you head out, check out this video or this one. And until next time, cheers.